We're going to talk about China has made changes to the release of Minions Rise of Gru to appease their censorship there. It says, bad guys turn good in China Minions movie ending. From Beijing, what small yellow loves bananas and promotes the rule of law? A minion, at least according to an edited version of the latest animated film featuring supervillain Gru and his army of tiny sidekicks being screened in China. The funny thing about this is this is an ongoing trend with movies being released in China. So it says, the fifth installment of the lucrative Despicable Me franchise, Minions: The Rise of Gru, premiered in China this month, several weeks after the film opened in the United States. But while the international version of the kung fu-filled family-friendly romp set in the 1970s San Francisco land area tells the story of how the dastardly Gru cut his teeth as a tween criminal, filmgoers in China are treated to an alternate ending in which the good guys win, which is a very, as we've mentioned, that's an ongoing theme with movies that get edited in China, because what they want is they don't ever want it to look like the non-authoritarian side wins. This happened when they released Fight Club over there, or it got leaked over there, and they changed the ending to Fight Club. It happened with, what was the other one? There was another example given in one of these articles. But, if I have that one here.
Friends.
So, yeah, they edited Friends, but that was for LGBTQ content. Mm-hmm. That is an ongoing thing. We know that that's always happening. But here it's like they don't want, they need to squash, like they said that when they did it with Friends, or I'm sorry, when they did it with Fight Club, that it was like to squash like Hong Kong protests, and they don't want you to ever feel like you have a chance against the government. So it says the part I find funniest about this all is like how like little effort goes into it. They basically just add like a little graphic at the end that changes the entire movie. Makes no sense.
What, they just make a screen where it explains this is what actually happens?
Yeah. So it says a series of subtitled still images inserted into the credit sequence on mainland Chinese screens reassures the audiences that the police catch Gru's law-breaking mentor Wild Knuckles and lock him up for 20 years after a failed heist. International viewers simply see Knuckles give the police the slip by faking his death earlier in the film's concluding scenes. But in the Chinese version, he puts his con artist skills to positive use in prison, where he follows his love of acting and sets up a theatrical troupe. Is that how you pronounce that, troupe? Like an acting troupe? Yeah.
No, troupe.
It says, as for Gru, he eventually becomes one of the good guys devoted to raising his family, the Chinese ending says. It's not the first time a popular foreign film has been altered in the cinemas for China, where the entertainment industry faces some of the world's strictest censorship rules and is tasked with promoting healthy values. My question to you is, does this prove that globalist entertainment is actually impossible because you cannot actually provide a message that appeals to literally every market in one without something being changed?
Oh, I'm anti-globalism generally.
Yes.
I think globalism is bad, and I think we should.
But Hollywood isn't.
Like it when people embrace and make art that is specific to their culture. But yeah, I mean, I think in some ways globalism is just Hollywood being lazy. They're like, how can we make something that we can sell to as many people as possible, but only have to make once? Like, we already have to dub voices. That's too much for us, says Hollywood.
Have you ever seen like the list of like the amount of different dubs on a Netflix movie? It's like this long. You can listen to it in like 30 languages.
Well, I saw this interview recently with Jack Black, and it might be from a couple years ago, but he was like, yeah, I was just in China for the premiere of Kung Fu Panda. And they were like, you were? And he was like, yeah, it might surprise you because it's an animated bear and someone dubs my voice, but I was there. Because to be fair, he's like an actor that's associated with the brand, but it doesn't
when it's voice acting,
why was he even there?
Things.
They should have had the voice actor walk the, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
And this does happen in China frequently with LGBTQIA plus content, because they haven't released a Marvel movie since like 2019 because any of those scenes, Marvel is, to their credit, Marvel is, if those are the values for Marvel and they're refusing to change it, I have no problem with that. I think if you make a movie, you should be proud of it and you shouldn't change it just to appease one market, right? That's especially if we believe that that's a Western value that we want to promote. Whatever your views are on that, then I agree with the idea of not changing your product just to satisfy one authoritarian government market, which is what this is, because the hardest thing to do is to get a movie through in China because the box office is so huge and they only let a certain number of films in every year.
They are capitulating to communism.
Yes,
that's like what's the most interesting thing. We should just call it what it is.
So, and also they keep like none of the profit. Like when you like release a movie in the States, the theater, like the studio gets 60%, the theater gets 40%. if you release a movie in China, the Chinese government gets 75 to 80%, the studio only gets 20%, but they deem that market of like over 1 billion people a worthwhile market to make those changes to. I disagree. I don't think you should be capitulating to that government, but that's what they're doing in these. But it's always weird how it's always about like making it seem like the authoritarian end of the spectrum comes out on top. Like with Fight Club and like with this.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is one of those things that they'll end up continuing to do, or will they just start making their movies differently? That's what, like, because we're pretty.
What do you mean?
Hollywood
making their movie
loves
differently?
anti-heroes, and Hollywood loves gray story, like less than black and white storytelling.
Sure.
China obviously has no interest in black and white or in gray area storytelling. They want to tell black and white stories that promote their values. I think Hollywood is falling out of love with China in recent years.
I
getting
think
harder and
China
harder.
is falling out of love with Hollywood.
Yes, okay,
Aren't they
that's-
starting to produce
yeah.
more of their own films?
Lake Chagrin or whatever it was made like $1 billion just in China.
Like America's number one export used to be culture, but
Yeah.
nobody likes Americans' modern culture.
No,
right
they
now.
don't.
So China doesn't want it. They don't need us. So now that they know, like, they've had enough time to study the Hollywood film industry and figure out how to make movies, they are just going to make them on their own with their own values.
Yep.
Like Hollywood doesn't need China doesn't need Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's-
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's either going to go that way or every movie is going to cut off from the last scene with a description of what actually happened that was
There was a really funny thing
acceptable.
where they point out how like the piece at the end looked like a PowerPoint presentation because they probably just added it really quickly at the end.
Is this from this article on Timcast? Is this the actual ending where it just explains that through the clue provided by Tyler, the police rapidly figured out? So they don't actually show him go to a hospital.
No,
it's
because-
not like there's an extra scene. It just cuts off
Yeah.
to black screen.
Yeah, just like in Fight Club, instead of seeing the explosion at the end, it's like the police showed up and saved the day, and all the criminals went to jail for 20 years. Because
kinda
they want to
sad.
promote rule of law, and they want to promote the idea that the good guys, them, always come out ahead in the end.
Yeah.
Even in fiction.
Yep. It says the Chinese ending still has Norton's character killing off Durden, but instead of the explosions, it showed a black screen with the text, "The police rapidly figured out the whole plan and arrested all the criminals, successfully preventing the bomb from exploding." From what I understand, that's actually closer to the book than...
There's a Minions book.
No,
Wait,
that's
what?
they're talking about Fight Club.
Fight Club.
Oh, Fight Club, okay.
Apparently, that's
Lost track
closer
of this
to the.
conversation.
I don't know for sure because I never read the book, but apparently that's closer to what happens in the book than the American movie version took liberties, which I didn't know.
I've never seen Fight Club. It's hard for me to comment on.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It's crazy.
Would you? Is this the,
It's like
behind.
it's like Pulp Fiction. Like you
I've
gotta
also-
watch it
I
a
don't
couple
know that I've
times
seen
eventually.
all of Pulp Fiction either.
We're
Brett
gonna
just
have a
rubbed
movie
his
night.
head like, what are we doing?
We're gonna have a movie night.
Yeah.
See, this is why you guys
We're
need
gonna have to
Mary.
get
She's
you-
actually seen movies, whereas I'm like, I've heard about movies. I don't really know what they are.
So if there was American values that you would like to see us exporting that aren't getting exported, what would they be?
I don't care about exporting American values. I think America should be cultivating American values. I really want a return of like Westerns and what's Terror on the Prairie is kind of like this.
Yellowstone is
Yellowstone is
very
like
well.
that, like the American like grittiness, toughness. We're gonna figure it out. There's like a lot of just like heartbreak, but also like family oriented, like advocating for the people that you care about. I think that needs to make a resurgence. In fact, I think it is because we need to stop mutating American culture to make everyone happy and focus on what makes the individual empowered to pour back into their community.
And this is actually, it's funny because that's like kind of what I wanted to, like when we were having our off day yesterday while talking about like yesterday we were talking about how Top Gun Maverick just passed Avengers Infinity War as like the 6th highest grossing domestic release of all time. And what I was kind of trying to get into discussion wise, which I was never able to really fully articulate, was like, should we be focusing more inwards when releasing our movies if we want to see movies become this successful again? Because that movie's actually doing pretty well overseas as well, but it, for the most part, holds American, a certain level of American idealism.
It is doing well overseas, and I was thinking about this after discussion. So it did well the best domestically, better than a lot of other films do. And if you're in another country, you've traveled a ton.
Not that much.
I don't know. I feel like you've been to South America, you've been to Middle East. Like,
Okay,
if you're
that's
going
fair.
to another country, you're watching their movies, right? And so if you're in America and you're watching a foreign film, you're like, oh, this is Italian theater, this or cinema, this is French cinema, this is like a different culture. We associate differences with it with that culture.
Yeah.
And if we keep trying to make American cinema about appealing to the mass global audience, we lose what's American about it. And I think Top Gun Maverick, because it's about the military, can't help but be like Americana. It can't help but have American tropes, which makes it American theater, which Americans actually want.
But but the funny thing is that still, like, even if we don't necessarily like the values we're exporting right now, and we don't want to export, it still is the largest. Like, we're still the largest tastemaker as far as culture.
That's the thing. Like, we don't need to worry about exporting it. We'll do it naturally.
Yeah.
We need to just focus on what our culture is interested in. Like, when you're I don't know, a fashion icon, or you're big in your industry, you do the things that you find interesting and people find that interesting. You don't go out and say, like, how can I appeal to as many of you as possible?
Not worrying about what other people think is what makes it interesting. It actually adds to a certain level of gravitas to what you're doing.
Yeah. Right? And I think that not every movie should have the goal of spreading a value or a message. Some stuff is just fantasy and fiction for entertainment, and I think that's okay.
Usually the idea there is that, like, you can't get away from it just because it's instilled in the values of the creator. So it will whether you want it to or not, it will come through in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But I think that, like you said, there's also a lot of, like, people overanalyze a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, like bad guy crime movies aren't necessarily with the intent to, like, make some criminals.
I don't need
inspire some.
I actually had a topic picked out for sometimes, like, if I'm struggling to find stuff that I really, like, get excited to talk about, I look for more esoteric articles, and I found one which we may end up using tomorrow. It's like sex versus violence, which one is worse for, like, children to see on TV and movies, which I think it's a fascinating thing to debate. And in films, both, like, because we were talking the other day about, like, Mary was talking about why does the sex scene need to be showed on screen? And then somebody said, well, by that logic, somebody super chatted, like, it's like, well, then you don't need to show but what if, like, they're talking about, like, the violence in war movies? Like, you need to see that to understand the importance of why the war was bad. So the conclusion being, like, you need to see the sex scene to understand how they consummated whatever relationship that was built in the movies. I disagreed. In fact, I was watching I was watching House of the Dragon last night, and we're going to talk about it there in the final segment. But, like I said, with Game of Thrones, all of those scenes, outside of the ones that were done for it was always exploitative and seemed unnecessary to me. But I don't know necessarily whether one is worse than the other. And I don't know if those are American values necessarily, but it's certainly not like violence or sexual proclivities are unique to the United States. So.
No, I don't think they're unique to the United States. I think they're in a lot of cultures, and I think cultures deal with them differently, which is why it's worth having movies that give you a glimpse into how that community, whether it be town, state, culture, country, region of the world, whatever, deals with these issues, because you are ultimately going to decide for yourself where you fall on the spectrum of tolerating these things.
The internet also made it made us more prone to making content supposedly for the rest of the world too, because now we're more connected now than we ever were when we were younger. Before, when you made your movies, you distributed them in other countries, but you got your reviews from American reviewers, and you weren't like necessarily all that concerned about what international press was saying about your film. You would be worried about what international customers might be saying, but you didn't really hear from them unless they wrote you a letter or something like that. Now, with the access to social media, they want to find a way to appeal to literally everyone that can hit them up in their inbox, and that's the entire world, not just the United States.
Yeah. So. I think it's reflective to, like, how different would your life be if you only cared about the opinions of people who you respected, trusted, and knew well, right?
Yeah.
If you didn't... because I think we all look for guidance or some feedback in our lives. That's sort of natural. But instead of needing it from, like, the great masses that are unknown and unnamed on the internet, what if you had people in your lives whose lives you admired or whose values you admired, and that's how you reflected back on yourself.
That's how it should be. I think that you shouldn't care about what everybody thinks, because not everybody has great takes.
Well, also, like, you drive yourself nuts doing that. Like, I struggle with that, so I avoid overexposing myself to people's opinions of me, good or bad.
Yeah.
Just because I don't have it in me to just take it up, read it, and let it go. I can let stuff get to me. So again, that is my responsibility to structure my life in a way that doesn't allow myself to doom scroll through a bunch of stuff that will end up pissing me off.
Yeah. For me, I just try to remember you can't please everybody.
Yeah.
So
And also, do you want to please everybody?
do what's right for you.
Yeah. Like there are people whose lives are different from mine and whose values are different from mine, and that's fine for them, but I don't need their affirmation because I don't want to live a life that they are living. So why would it matter if they don't like what I'm doing? I don't want to do what they're doing.
I think some of that comes down to like whether how self-assured you are. Like if you're less self-assured, like maybe that's my issue is like with a certain level of self-assurance, like you can brush it off easier.
But
So-
if you're seeking reassurance
Yeah.
from others all the time,
And where you are, like these things come and go. There are times that you are more vulnerable to feeling the pressures or wanting feedback when you're going through periods of growth and you're sort of reevaluating your value. There's just like
there's just
$1 bill
one
spit out.
shout out right at the end.
And I say that because like if people insult my skating, doesn't bother me. I know what I'm capable of. That's never offended me because I understand where my talent level is. So there's all the confidence in the world with that. Something like this is you're putting your own opinions out there to be judged and picked apart by people for good or for better or worse. Some may agree with you, some may disagree with you. And if you're less confident in something like that, it can be harder to do that.
Do people ever diss your skating?
I do every day because I think it'll make him
Aside
better.
from Hannah Claire,
just kidding.
she does it.
I'm just
to
kidding.
Motivate you.
I don't bully Brett. I swear.
Like a lot of people, there's like everybody has like that one or two people that just for some reason can't just let it go.
Just on every
every
Instagram
post,
clip.
like,
I got a few of those.
Like they're like my response used to be to like I would like if somebody said something really mean, I would use that as my pinned comment and then like it. Now
That's
I just
hilarious.
See,
don't respond.
it's at the point for me because I have people who just attack me on Instagram all day. It's like their job. But I also sometimes I can't tell if the people who are being the meanest hate me or if they are doing a parody of people who hate me and they actually like me and they're doing it to be funny.
That's the problem with internet discussion because without the context of like body language and tonal inflection,
Right.
you can't tell.
But also, like, if you hate on my skating, then don't watch it.
Yeah.
I still like to skate.
Well, that's something that's never bothered me because I'm just like when I see stuff I don't like, I just go on with my day. Like
Right.
I've never understood that's a certain
You don't
mentality.
need that
There's-
reassurance.
There's a mentality of a person who feels the need to reach out and say that to somebody who they like. I see stuff I disagree with all day, and I laugh. I say, "Oh, I don't agree with them," or I make fun of them in my head, whether that's nice or not. And then I don't say it to them. I go on with my day because they have a right to say it, and that's fine.
Totally.
So.
Sometimes I feel bad for people who do it because I've never found myself in a position where I was like leaving nasty comments about somebody's skateboarding or rollerblading video.
Well, I just think that's such a strange way to behave. And sometimes I want to be like, if your mom knew you were doing this, would she be disappointed in you? But then there are people whose moms also do that,
Yeah.
and you want to be like,
You've
your
never-
family life is messed up. I feel bad for you.
Right.
You've apparently never seen like a group of moms on Facebook because they.
I have, but like.
They're more than happy to do that to one another, but it's like that is a personality type, and I've also noticed like the worst thing you can do is engage. Like if somebody says something like that to me, if somebody like responds defending me, I'm like, oh, don't do that. Just leave it alone. Like they'll
200 notifications later.
and I'm like, I don't need you to defend me. Just let the guy say what he wants, and let's go on.
Yeah. Woo!
Thank you.
Party.
Thank you. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.